Hi there, villagers. Today I'm going to do a slightly different day in the life. I'm looking at the first half of the year in my book journey. I've been trying to read a lot more since I left university, because when you read because somebody told you to, you get out of the habit of finding things you like and actually knowing where to stand in a bookshop or a library. I remember being bewildered once and just leaving again because I couldn't find anything I wanted, having read for so long, because somebody told me I had to read this for an essay or a class. So when my daughter was small, we practically lived at the library. It felt like they had a singing class and a story time and all sorts of things. And one day, the library near us hosted a book doctor, in inverted commas, a very, very senior librarian who'd had a long library experience, was present for the day. They gave her a white coat to wear, and at the time I was in the library with my daughter, she had no other customers. So she very graciously accompanied us to the children's section so that my daughter could sit and play with the picture books, as her age indicated at the time. And the book doctor spoke to me about what books I had read before I went to university, what books I have enjoyed since, which was a really small number, and what I'd studied at university, to see if, something in my degree subject, which was American Studies, would give me away as what kind of books I would like. And she wrote me a prescription, a title and an author, or a couple of titles and a couple of authors. And at the time I finished her prescription, she probably had about a 50% accuracy rate. Now, the reason I have an American Studies degree is because I basically grew up on the Little House on the Prairie books, Anne of Green Gables, and the Waltons. So an American Studies degree, which wasn't something I actually knew about to start with until I was already at college doing my A-levels, which in the UK means I would be 16 to 18 for my American viewers. And so as a result, I came away with this list of books that I might like. I then discovered Goodreads, which I cannot recommend highly enough to you. If you're not using Goodreads and have trouble keeping track of what books you like, what books you've read already, do you ever open a book and think, I think I've read this book before, but have no way to prove whether or not you have? Goodreads is a website and an app that helps you track the books you've read, track down authors that you like and what other books they've written, and you can see what your friends are reading. And at the moment, while I'm filming, it is the mid-end of June, and in a week's time I'm going to be interviewing a school friend of mine from my school in Cornwall, and I haven't actually seen him personally since I was 16, but he has just written a book. So I'm going to be interviewing him about his writing process and other things in the sort of, what does he like for breakfast and how does his writing style go and when did he get inspired with this book and things like that. So I'm a book person, really. It's just taken a long time to rediscover it after finishing a degree in a fairly hefty academic subject where you do have to read quite a lot. So I have tracked down with Goodreads what books I have read from January to now, which, as I said, at the time of filming will be July, but I don't think this video is going to go live. I've got a good run of pre-filmed ones, so I don't think you'll actually see this till at least September. But it'll give you something to work on if you like the same sort of books as me. Since starting my new job, I now work for the physio department at the local community hospital to us. I get to walk to work, it's very exciting. And the NHS has a book club, which a digital online community where they recommend books, and I have three, I think, in this list that are books that we've read for book club that, to tell you the truth, if they were in a bookshelf, I would not have picked them up in a bookstore or a library. because you do judge a book by its cover, no matter what anybody says. And the storyline for at least one of them looked a bit questionable, but they all end well, which is what I like in a story. A story that you don't disagree with the ending is a good book, in my opinion. So, that being said, I've got it here on a sheet next to me, the book titles. They will come up in some guise or other. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it yet. Might be split screen, it might be an insert, we'll see. So the first book, I have read everything I can get my mitts on by this author. So Jenny Colgan, she writes lovely books. The kind of books that you could read and fall asleep and go happily off to dreamland and not need to read something else after you've read a chapter of her books. Her books are fab. They end properly, and she has a good stack of them in readiness for you to discover her. She has several series that she has written, so I do recommend you read them in the groupings that they're meant to be and in the correct order that they're meant to be. So this year I have read The Island Wedding by Jenny Colgan, and that's the only one so far. I'm waiting for her to write a new one. There is a new one coming. I have then read The Woman He Loved Before by Dorothy Coomson. I've read a couple of Dorothy Coomsons before, Rose Petal Beach and The Ice Cream Girls. And at least The Ice Cream Girls is a Netflix film, I think I'm right in saying. They're a little on the scary side to some degree, but this one is kind of twisty, and you're seeing it from multiple storylines, all not knowing how they're going to join up at the end, which is quite nice, and that does end up properly. I'm also rereading the Outlander series. There are 9 big books plus interspersed novellas, and I'm reading them in the correct order that the author has illustrated on her website. So Diana Gabaldon, I highly recommend her books. They are so incredibly well weaved, and to say that she wrote them from a let me see if I can write a book premise, the honest answer is yes. And if you end up with a TV deal out of it, you can write books. So at the beginning of the year, I was about halfway through the reread of the process. So you'll see several Outlander books dotted throughout this list. So the first one I read this year was The Fiery Cross by Diana Gabaldon, which I think I'm right in saying is book 5 in the series. I'd already read the first 4 before Christmas. I then read Beartown by Frederick Backman. It's the first one I've read of his. A Man Called Otto is on Netflix, maybe Prime, I forget which, starring Tom Hanks. But Beartown, well, it could be Canada, but you know it's not, because it's meant to be sort of Norway or Sweden or somewhere else that also plays ice hockey. It's set in an ice hockey town. The town has virtually no other industry at all except it's ice hockey, and it's different. It's not something I would have chosen to read, but it came recommended by a YouTuber that I like, so that worked very well. She also recommended the next one, One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and that is now also Netflix or Prime, one of those. And they have cast it so well that I watched it recently and thought, well, yes, that's exactly how that person looked. And better still, it has the female lead from Hamilton in it, and it took me minutes to work out who she was. And star-studded cast for the rest of the cast list, except both the men in the book. The rest of the cast, you go, oh, I know that woman. Why do I know that woman? So you spend half the movie with your phone out on IMDb going, now, I know who's that? And, oh, yes, of course it is, and things like that. Next up, A Breath of Snow and Ashes, also by Diana Gabaldon. There are several in this list. The next book I read was The Girl from Pendarvis by Rosemary Atkin, who I think is dead now, so there clearly won't be any more. She has written quite a lot. Some of them I looked up the other day to make sure that I could tell you things about each of the authors. They're quite academic, some of her books. and she obviously has Cornish life experience, hence the book being set in Cornwall. But it is old in its style of writing, and I didn't get on with it, so I shan't be reading anymore. But the storyline did work well in the end once you got into it, but it took a long time to get into. And next in my chronological list of things I've read this year, An Echo in the Bone by Diana Gabaldon, also part of the Outlander series. And then the first one I read for book club was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, which I think I'm right in saying was her debut novel. We didn't pick it because it was her debut novel, and in fact they had picked it before I joined book club, so I had to read it at speed. And I read it while I was staying at my mum and dad's, and absolutely everything felt more pressing to do than read this book, that I knew I had a deadline for and had to get on with reading it. I knitted, I washed up, I did all sorts of things just to avoid reading the book, which I did read in the end, and it was okay. But it's set in the 50s and 60s, it's out of my life experience, and it took a long time to get into it. But I know other people who have loved it. I have discovered a series of books that also have a Netflix version. The Chesapeake Shores books are written by Cheryl Woods. Cheryl has an S at the beginning and 2 R's in the middle, in case you have trouble looking her up, because I did to start with. I am halfway through a series of 14 books by her in the Chesapeake Shores series. She also has about 16 or something ridiculous other series, and there are at least 2, if not 7 books in each of those series. So I've got enough to keep me going till I die, practically. So I have to live a really long time to get through them all. But they are lovely. And this week, at the mid-end of June, I suppose you'd call him the male lead, but it's an ensemble drama for Chesapeake Shores, so how you describe him I don't know, but the actor's just had an accident and died, so they clearly aren't going to be making any more anyway, because I think they have now concluded the series is at 5, I think it might be 6 series, but obviously if you lose the father figure in it because the actor's died, you need to, if you were going to make any more, you'd have to be very creative about how you went about it. But the books are lovely. They are generational, so each book will tell you the story of something, and then the next book will be something completely different, but that's all in the same family grouping, which is quite nice. The next book was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt, also a debut novel. And we read this for book club this month, and it wouldn't be one I would choose based on how it looks. I will put a picture here or somewhere where you can see. It's about an octopus and an elderly woman. And it sounds like a very slightly far-fetched storyline when you read the back, and it is really quite sweet. And it keeps you guessing right until the very end. You think you know what's going on, and it turns out there are other elements to things. So nothing is straightforward, as is life often, I find. And also the same month for book club, we read People of Abandoned Character by Claire Whitfield. I thought it was her debut novel, but I have subsequently found a second one. So whether this is the first one or the other one was, they're not related to each other, so I don't think it matters. But it's set around the premise that a woman thought her husband might be Jack the Ripper, set in 17 or 18, whatever it was. I won't tell you anything else about it other than I really wouldn't have picked it up on that basis alone. But it keeps you guessing all the way through about, is she dead? Is she speaking from beyond the grave? I've read a book like that once. You didn't know until the very last minute. So People of Abandoned Character is interesting and stretched me because it was well out of my comfort zone. The next 3 are either Outlander big books or Outlander novellas, because we're rapidly approaching the end of the current book list. We're all just sitting waiting on tenterhooks for her to write book 10. Please get on with it, Ms. Gabaldon. So the next one is Written in My Own Heart's Blood, and then 2 novellas, A Leaf on the Wind of All Hallows and The Space Between, which I read according to the list, but may make more sense to read the opposite way round. I think the story would flow better if you read The Space Between and then you read A Leaf. And I'm currently actually sitting on my pile of books to read is The 24-Hour Cafe by Libby Page. I've read The Lido by Libby Page, and that was very good. So I had high hopes for this. It's taking a little while to get into. And her next book is also sitting in the pile, so I do need to get on with it because I've rented both of them from the library, and the library will be wanting them back soon. If I'm not quick to get on with it, somebody else will want it. And then the last book currently in the Outlander series is book 9, Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone. And I have literally just started it as an audiobook this evening because I've finished the others. And if you're not using Audible, I strongly suggest you do, because you can't always sit and read, but you can have someone read it to you while you're doing things like washing up or driving in the car or lying in the bath. I'm not one of nature's little bath people that can have books in. The book would end up soggy because I would drop it and it would be wet. So I really like Audible, and I have more books stored up there to read than I'm probably ever going to get the chance to read. So, be careful what you start is my moral, really. And that is the end of my list of things I have read. As I said at the beginning, I have struggled to find what I like. I think I've now cracked that. And my top authors, which I will put in a list here, are Diana Gabaldon, Jenny Colgan, Leslie Pierce. I haven't read any of hers for a little while, but I like hers. I used to like Jodie, and how you say her surname is entirely up to you, but this is how it's spelt, until I had kids. And then her books scare me a bit, so I've stopped reading hers for a little while, but I have met her. She came to the library, not near me, but a library in the county, and I went to stand in the queue to have her sign something for me. I thought she was going to talk too, but she didn't. She just sat behind the table and did signings, which I was slightly disappointed at, that she didn't actually address the crowd, so to speak. And then, of course, you have good solid favourites like Little House on the Prairie and Anne of Green Gables, which are the reasons, as I say, I have the degree I do. I now try and read at least 30 books a year. I cheat, as I've said, Audible, so that somebody else reads them to me. And the comical thing about Audible is the voice of the octopus in Remarkably Bright Creatures. He sounds like Frasier from Frasier. But the ladies in the book club who read the physical book said that wasn't remotely how the octopus sounded to her. So, be careful what you get, because you may end up with a slightly warped view of what an accent should sound like, or you have the advantage of knowing how something should be pronounced, for instance, because that's how the author, or the narrator at least, read it like that. So I hope you find something in there that you would like to try. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, and if you have any recommendations for nice books that you can go to sleep on. I don't do scary stuff. I will tell you that I don't watch 18 rated, or in America, R-rated movies anymore. After a couple of really bad experiences when I was about 20, much to the amusement of my husband's nieces and nephews, who knew I was over 18 were once told, oh no, Tamsin doesn't watch 18 rated movies. And they were about 12 and 14 at the time. And they looked me up and down and went, well, she's clearly older than that. Why isn't she allowed to watch? And it's not that I'm not allowed, I just choose not to, because I would rather see the world as a nice place with happy, nice people in it than a scary place where Jack the Ripper is technically still on the loose because he was never found. But apparently octopuses are very intelligent people, and they speak like Frasier. So hopefully you find something in this collection of assortment of books, and I might make another one if this one goes well. Let me know, keep me posted, find things you like and let me know. Goodbye everybody, have a nice evening.